Welcome to Work Love Wednesday. Daisy and Smelter here for Work Love Wednesday. It is time for Work Love Wednesday. I'm late. Hi, Facebook. I'm late today for Work Love Wednesday. Although most of you don't join me live. You watch later anyway, so it will be here for you on time whenever it is convenient for you. But being late today, this morning, kind of all really ties into the topic. And I kind of knew that this is what I want to talk about last night. You can see on Facebook, you can't see her on Instagram, but on Facebook, you can see Molly hanging out behind. I don't know which way to go. There she is. There she is. Oh. But I kind of already knew the topic that I wanted to talk about last night. You may have seen the post that I did about chilling and about the professional development conference that I went to yesterday, about the bad and the ugly of HR. It was definitely the first of its kind that I've ever been to, and definitely talking about topics that maybe we had reference in the HR industry and other times briefly, but never dived in as deep as we did yesterday. So I really appreciated it. It was definitely very heavy, but I think necessary. And so things that we were talking about is like the opioid crisis, talking about truly what happens when somebody is addicted to a substance, but anything in general, talking about workplace violence and that topic, and realistically, like, what do we do in those situations beyond maintaining what our job is, you know, as good people, how do we help others when we want to help others? So it was very eye-opening and definitely gave me a lot to reflect on. And it was kind of the perfect ending to all the things that had been happening in the last week. They kind of have been slowly building on top of each other. And as most of you know, I'm a big believer that everything happens in the time that it's supposed to happen. And so I think it's all been leading to this reflection that we're going to do here on Work Love Wednesday about stress. We're going to talk about stress. I talk about stress, but rarely talk about managing techniques, just because I'm a big believer that you don't talk about anything or teach about anything that you haven't figured out yourself. And so if my stress levels weren't in check, then I really had no rhyme or reason to really teach others or to really give advisement or even talk about tactics that I hadn't used. So in most cases, when I have shared, it's because I know others who have successfully managed their stress using some of those techniques, and thought I would share those as some sort of resource for people who are really struggling with it and were ready to really make a difference in their life. And I hadn't quite gotten there yet, to be honest. One other random fact. So I think I can show you Instagram. You'll like go up because I will be able to show Facebook, but Instagram can Facebook can, hi Instagram. This is like up close. But you can see this wonderful book that you can't see on Instagram because Instagram's just being raised up. That is become very helpful as a mount. It's the first book that I have that actually holds the stand for the phone, for Instagram, for the live feed. And usually I really struggle on how to elevate Instagram and get you there. Well, my Chinese medical Qigong therapy textbook that finally came is the perfect width for that. So it's great. And it's so funny because during training, the book that he actually uses to prop up the projector, because he has some of the newer editions and talks about how it's a great like book with the right amount of depth to prop up a projector. And now here I am using it to prop up Instagram. So fun fact. It's a massive book, but I'm very excited to start diving in because I go for my second round of training in the beginning of May. Yeah, so I'm really pumped about that. All right, so let's talk about stress, right? Let's see, where do we start? I guess one of the places that I want to start is Monday nights I teach at the local college. I teach at York College, and I teach a class on human resource development. And this past week during class, we did some work around individual HRD interventions. So basically some of the top personnel issues that I've seen when we're dealing with people development and how to help those individuals. And there are some typical kind of generic classes that where people's performance end up being. And so there are some tools that you kind of have in your toolkit that you can use on a routine basis to help individuals that are having those kinds of performance struggles. And so we were talking about those in small group discussions, just introducing that concept about, you know, when we talk about human resource development, it's no training class. So we do training interventions in a formal environment, but how does that translate to individual basis, which is a lot of what the industry is moving towards. I mean, the whole heavy desire for having coaches, whether it's life coaches or personal trainers, that whole aspect, we have people asking to be seen individually and wanting to really be able to implement and make a difference in their lives and their careers based off the skill sets that they have personally for themselves. And so this individuality that is being demanded from employees or people in general, it's not going to go away. And so I felt it very necessary to talk to those who have an interest in training and developing people. Like, how do we do this when the target audience is one? And so we talked about that, and it kind of turned into this rant because one of the generic kind of categories is your superstar performer. A lot of the times the problem or dilemma or area of opportunity that presents itself in that scenario is someone who is running too fast on the treadmill, sprinting or on the hamster wheel, and just can't slow down. They're usually superior. They're superior in performance because they are doing way too much. And that could be just because of where they are in life. They don't have, they're not married, they don't have a significant other, they don't have kids. It could be their first job out of college. They could have relocated for the job, so other family and friends are nowhere nearby. And so they immerse themselves in the work environment, and basically that becomes their life. And we know that, and I know that I was guilty of this very early on in my career. In fact, I should say my entire career, every organization that I worked for, I became almost intimately involved. I mean, the people that worked there were like an extended piece of my family. You got to know them. You got to know their quirks. It was no different than going to Thanksgiving dinner and having the weird uncle or the funny, silly aunt or the grandparents or the extended family that shows up. I mean, that is basically what working for me was like, and how I got to know people in those relationships. And that really was my world. Even when Josh and I had been together and were engaged, we were both very busy professionals, and our focus was on our jobs. We always talk about how before kids and all these things, like, what did we do with all of our free time? We spent it at work. We spent it at connecting and doing things that basically were helping our professional lives. It wasn't unheard of for us to want to work extra hours. It wasn't unheard of to get up early and just go to the office. And that was kind of how life went. And so one of the things that really has struck a chord with me lately, and I think yesterday really was the topping in this area of reflection, is that when we're going, and that's what our focus becomes, and we're feeding off of that stress, and that's where our area of focus is, it can hit a point where it is so unbalanced that it starts to hurt us. So me personally, my career was very important to me. I loved what I was doing. I loved immersing myself in it. And that was really where my priority was. So therefore, giving myself, food that would help, basically take care of my wellness or even help manage my stress levels from a holistic kind of standpoint was out the window. I mean, I was a frequent flyer at every fast food restaurant up and down 83 when I worked up in Harrisburg, up and down when I worked in Allentown. And so it was not unheard of for me to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner that was all from a fast food restaurant. So when you take that compounded with whatever has been going on in your life, and that's your primary focus. I mean, years and years of just putting all that crap into your body, it's just going to take a toll. I mean, I tell the story about the Snickers bar in my first book, From Heart to Heart, but I always use it a lot in teaching. Like if I eat a king size candy bar today, I'd leave my house and all of you call me out on it saying that, hey, you've been eating those king size candy bars. But if I eat a king size candy bar once a day, every day for a year, I guarantee you're probably going to see a difference. If I keep that practice and I eat them, 3 or 4 or 5, times a day, or 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're going to see a difference. And so when we're talking about stress, we don't realize when we're out of balance, our coping strategies, they're there, but they're not very healthy. And it actually basically starts to hurt us even more. So we always joke about drinking glasses of wine as a stress decompressor, which is really great if it's in moderation and there's a reason behind it, but it can also be very dangerous if it becomes our go-to and it's our way of numbing the sensations of stress or calming ourselves down so that we can just kind of hit the pause button for a moment. And so those things are very important to kind of just pay attention to. And so on Monday, I kind of went on this rant about how people basically can work themselves to a point where they just shut down. And so those professional aspirations are never truly reached because they essentially burn out. They have to take short-term disability. They end up having to work with mental health professionals. Some of them go to the doctors and get prescriptions just because it all becomes too much. And we get to a place where we can't try to bring things back into balance ourselves, and we need someone to basically intervene. And yesterday, when we were talking about the opioid crisis and addiction and who is the person who potentially typically, who we're stereotyping, think falls into that category, and who actually does, and it's basically anybody, because it's this unique kind of, fascinating, this unique kind of blend of genetics and, talking about addiction and what happens in the brain. But anyone could do it. We see people all the time that enter a downward spiral, whether it is because of some sort of mental breakdown or burnout, or because they fell into some sort of addiction of some sort. But those things are very real, and the path to them is basically the environment that's around us. And for a lot of us, it's that professional environment. But it could also be personal environment. I mean, I can totally tell you that I could not be a stay-at-home mom because that environment really stresses me out. It really stresses me out. How stay-at-home moms, how you do it with the kids, I give you major kudos, because I think that is 100 times harder than whatever I have to deal with at work, or what I've ever had to deal with at work. Anyways. So, so Monday I went on this weird rant to my students about talking about taking care of themselves. And it was kind of inspired. They do these journals where they do these reflections. And a couple of the students have routinely kind of shared how stressed they are in regards to school. And that really starts to show me kind of the beginning signs of what potentially that path can look like. If you're already stressed with just school assignments, what happens when there's real stakes involved, when it's really that job that you absolutely want and love? If it's the beginning of this career that you've always dreamed of, or, in the personal, when you start to immerse yourself because your dreams are manifesting, what is the dangerous potential outcome that could possibly happen? And so I went on this rant and talked about it, but it also, looking at the potential outcomes that are there. And also for me, it has been this heavy reflection on the amount of stress that actually I have put on myself. And when we think about stress, we need to think about it in the perspective of there's so many different types. There's the physical stress that we put on our bodies that we do sometimes at the gym. There's the emotional stress. There's the mental stress. All of those stresses are combined, and they're all impacting us. And they're all impacting our vessel or our body, which is what we're gifted to do and live this incredible life, which is why wellness is such a big component of it. This is also why holistically we're looking at all kinds of products and stuff to kind of limit what is being exposed into our body, because we're trying to really shift. I think we're seeing a huge movement in the shift of taking care of our vessel per se, so that we can show up at our best and live our best lives and have them full of joy and full of love. And so one of the things that was really eye-opening to me really in January is that, for the last 4 years, I've been on this personal fitness journey. I I'll address that, but I had been doing lifting because I really, truly love weightlifting. And that's, everyone always told me, if you're on a weight loss journey or trying to get healthy, find something that you love, do that and immerse yourself, and then everything else will work out. I ran into more challenges with that just because of the different types of how you have to fuel your body so that you can lift, especially if you want to lift heavy. And that's kind of where I was going. Then on top of that, with the building of muscle and then contrast of losing fat, there was just a lot of variables added to it. But regardless to say, after about 4 years of having that focus, weight was never the goal, but it also, I thought, would be a nice kind of side effect that it would start to trend downward. And that's not what happened. In fact, it was trending the other way. And so one of the things that kind of came up very much so through a couple of different resources was talking about stress and not putting, stress is healthy in a balanced amount. But when we're so excessive in our stress limits, that could be the reason why our body is basically in a constant state of chaos and doesn't know what to do. And so losing weight or reaching those goals is the last thing on its mind. It's basically in survival mode. And so one of the things that I really had to come to terms with was that being an entrepreneur, being a working mom, being a wife, all these different dynamics, even being in the industry that I'm in, there was so much emotional, mental stress being put on my body. And then also even physical stress from the long hours that I was working. I was severely underestimating that when I would go to the gym. And so basically I was just adding more stress on top of more stress. And so in January, basically the challenge was, this is basically what I did, was to eliminate all unnecessary stress. So this meant projects that were not currently in development at work go on the back burner, and I'm still actively doing that. Things that did not have to happen now don't happen now. Releasing things that I can't control in this present moment to not worry about them. The same thing with my mentality when it came to health and fitness at the gym. It's not about killing myself. It's about restoring my body. It's about listening to my body. And so for basically close to about a month to 60 days, lifting went on the back burner to not pick up a weight. A lot of it was yoga. A lot of it was meditation. And a lot of it was stretching and just releasing that. And the scale, using that as the outcome kind of measurement, it shifted. I mean, it literally did shift a lot. And so it's shown me that that's exactly what needs to happen. And as I've kind of embraced that, recognizing the balance of stress in my life at any given time, it has continued to trend the way that it needs to trend. And so I say this because I just went through a couple of, I would say, very active weeks, and I haven't been doing the things that I have learned. So going for just periodic runs for stress relief, doing yin yoga. My daily qigong practice kind of took a hiatus, which is coming back today. Running came back today. Everything came back today. But this morning, after being on this kind of hiatus, I went to the gym, and I always have this mentality before that if you had a hiatus, you have to hit it hard. And you've got to like basically kill yourself at the gym. It's really this different kind of shift that I've had to have about, no, you've had this hiatus because you were managing your stress in a different way. You were listening to your body, because sometimes managing stress is sleeping, it's resting, it's meditating. There's different things that your body needs to bring it back into balance. Sometimes if you do heavy sedentary work where you don't move a lot or you don't have to think a lot, like if you're just entering data or something, then it makes sense why you need to go get your yang on at the gym and work it out. But it's looking at the entire picture. It's looking at everything. And I think, when we start thinking about our body as basically what empowers us to live this life and reach our goals and manifest what's happening, what we put into it basically equals what we're going to get out of it. And so even all the stress inputs, all the stress outputs, all the food that we stick in, those are stresses in some sort of way, whether it's a good or a bad. What we expose ourselves to, those are stressors. So scrolling through social media, watching the news, what we read, all of those things are very much so stressors. And so when we're talking about stress and managing it, you're looking at all of it. I mean, when I talk to people about stress, a lot of the times they isolate it to whatever their kind of professional path is, whatever those kinds of pieces are. And it's so much bigger than that. It's who we are as people and looking at the stress of life and seeing if the balance is correct between what stress we need versus not need. And if it's out of whack, how do we restore it? What do we have to start saying no to? What do we have to start saying yes to? What do we have to start making time for? I've talked about Qigong before. I can definitely tell you that this is the longest that I've went since I did my first training without it, which is basically, usually I maybe had missed one day and took a day of rest. But this most recently, I've gone, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, today's Wednesday. So 4 days. And yesterday I struggled at this conference and my body felt so differently. And I know it's because I don't have that daily practice. You don't know the potential of how you could be functioning until you start to remove all that crap, until you actually start paying attention and focusing on what you need to have in your body. And so, and listening to your body and being guided intuitively. So I think I just went on another stress-related rant today. Obviously showing that it's very alive and well in my processing as I'm going through all of this and thinking about it. And it's a very much a huge shift in perspective of listening to what your body needs, especially when we're talking about health and wellness. I think it's been addressed several different ways about listening to what your body needs, not torturing yourself, giving yourself joy, but then also at the base of it is really listening to what your body needs. And so when you're looking at, I don't know, the cookie, even the banana, is it something that your body really needs? Because I think one of the things that we've severely underestimated is, whether it comes to gluten or dairy or nuts, they all impact us differently. They all cause stress on our bodies very, very differently. And being mindful of that and knowing what your body needs versus what someone else's needs are very, very different. And so that individual perspective, that individual need and custom approach is necessary. And so exposing yourself to all these amazing people with all this amazing knowledge has been the only way that I've been able to come to a place for me in my reflection to really make choices about what I think is what's best for me. Yeah. So I guess my question to you is, what's happening in your world in regards to stress? What are your stress levels like right now? How are you managing them? If you're not managing them, you need help managing them. I mean, my gosh, reach out to me. Let's chat. Let's have coffee or do something like that. If you're watching this later on, make sure you say hey so that I know that you hopped on. And as always, enjoy Work Love Wednesday. Take some time to really appreciate what you love about what you do, whatever that work is that you're doing. And, you know, I'm a big believer in heart work, which is being authentic to who you are. So, yeah, enjoy Work Love Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I will talk to you next week.